Snow fell soft over Manhattan that Christmas Eve, but not soft enough to hide the truth. Nathan Cole, millionaire, widower, father, was leading his daughter home from a gala when she spotted a woman hunched by a dumpster guarding a misspelled cake. What began as a child's simple act of kindness, a scarf offered to a stranger, unraveled into something Nathan never expected, a promise from his late wife, delivered by the very woman fate had placed in that alley. And with it, the beginning of a story that would change all of their lives. The first snow of the season found its way into Manhattan like a surprise apology, a soft-spoken hush, falling over steel and glass and impatience. It made the sidewalks whisper underfoot and turned the air into a glittering nightlight that belonged to everyone. Nathan Cole watched a flake land on his daughter's mitten and vanish into wool, as if the city had pressed a kiss to her hand and then thought better of it. He tugged Lily closer on the sidewalk, the blue ribbon of Fifth Avenue bright with every window's idea of Christmas. And he tried to ignore how the snow made everything look more precious, more breakable, more suited to regret. "Daddy, she's cold," Lily said, stopping at the edge of the alley behind the bakery. A girl of 7, with an old soul and an undisciplined sense of justice, she pointed toward the shadowed shape at the dumpster, hunched over like a comma that never found its sentence. He had been hoping she didn't see. "Let's get you home," he told her. "It's late." "Santa's awake," she said, tipping her head back at the sky. "The snow is his dust. Grandma said so." "Grandma says lots of things," he squeezed her hand. "We've had a big day." A big day. That's what he told himself about almost every day now, because it sounded like a reason not to feel anything else. They just left a charity gala where he'd smiled and given a speech about giving, and watched a room of powerful people nod as if money could be sculpted into better hearts. He had been good at it. He wore success like a tailored coat. He wore grief like a tattoo under his shirt. The figure near the dumpster clanged another lid. Nathan's instincts flared, protective and quick, and he stepped in front of Lily without thinking. He was a millionaire and a single father, and terrified of the kinds of stories that started in alleys. His wife had been gone 20 months, Hannah, who used to laugh at his habit of rehearsing dangers as if life were a pitch meeting with risks to mitigate. After cancer, danger came like weather. You learn to make provisions, not predictions. "I'm going to give her my scarf," Lily declared. But the girl was already unwinding the green scarf he'd bought her at the fair that afternoon, the one with little embroidered stars. She marched into the alley with the kind of certainty that made adults long for a manual no one had ever written. Nathan followed, the cold cutting his ankles where his coat ended, the alley packed with the wet cardboards of luxury delivery and the yeast-sweet breath of wasted bread. The woman noticed them when they were close enough to see her eyes. She was thin in the way hunger redecorates a person. No curves, just angles. A face that had been wind-chapped into a map. Her hair was the color of smoke when a fire is almost out, her coat patched with duct tape and belief. There was a supermarket cake still in its plastic tomb, perched on top of the dumpster. She had just pried off the lid with a knife whose handle had been rewrapped with twine. "I don't want trouble," the woman said, voice rough but clear. "I'm just keeping the mice from getting diabetes." Lily took the absurdity as an invitation to giggle. Nathan stayed careful. "We're not trouble," he said. "We're a long day and a short walk from home." "Lucky," she said, eyes flicking to the ribbon-lit street beyond him and back. "Do you—" He didn't know what to ask without sounding like a man who thought he could fix her with $1,000 and good intentions. He held out his hand instead. "I'm Nathan. This is Lily." The woman didn't shake. She looked at Lily, at the scarf the child held out like a treaty. "Please," Lily said, as if offering the scarf were a way to let the night become a story she wanted to hear. The woman hesitated, then took the scarf with a tenderness that contradicted her duct-taped coat. She wrapped it around her neck, careful not to pull too tight, as if she wasn't used to being held by anything. "What's your name?" Nathan asked. The woman studied him for a beat too long, the snow making little stars in her lashes. "Mara." "Do you have somewhere to go, Mara?" he asked. "There's a shelter on 11th. "Full," she said gently. "The cold bought all the beds." Lily peered past Mara at the cake. "Is it somebody's birthday?" "Somebody's profit margin," Mara said. "They threw it away because the frosting read Christmas." Missing atom. We all make mistakes. Nathan felt the clench of uselessness in his chest. He could call a car service, a private security detail, a dozen people whose job descriptions included the word solve, and none of it would take the ice out of this woman's bones. He looked at the bakery's back door, the little square window glowing with the last light of the ovens, and he thought about the speech he had given an hour ago, the one that tasted like old pennies in his mouth. "Let me buy you a real meal," he said. "There's a diner around the corner." She shook her head, the scarf shifting, scent of lily of the valley rising from it from his daughter's grandmother's soap. Nathan saw the way her gaze kept slipping around him, as if she were watching for someone or something else. "Please," Lily chimed, as if echoing could turn wishes into weather. "They have hot chocolate there. Daddy lets me put too many marshmallows." "I don't want your pity," Mara said, "or your photo on the internet, or to give your kid a story that turns me into a lesson." Lily shrugged. "I like lessons." Nathan swallowed the part of him that wanted to defend himself, the well-practiced speech about how he never did press with his charity because real giving didn't need applause. The truth was, he'd been hiding in institutional giving because it kept him from doing the hard thing, which was looking someone in the eye and seeing his own blood underneath their skin. "It's not a lesson," he said. "It's dinner." Mara stared at him, and then at Lily, and then at the slice of city visible beyond the alley. The snow fell like someone had shaken a jar full of quiet. She made a choice he could see happen in her shoulders. "All right," she said, "but we eat where the windows look out and the doors don't lock behind me." "The diner it is," Nathan said. They walked in a line, Lily between them, little gloved hand in Nathan's, and the other curled around the air like she could hold on to it. Inside the diner, the warmth hit so hard Nathan felt the iron of it in his teeth. The waitress looked like she'd been born under a fluorescent light and learned to love it. She ushered them to a booth by the window, slid menus across the table, and poured coffee into a world that deserved it. "What can I get you?" she asked Mara, looking at the duct tape and the scarf, and the way Mara kept glancing at the door. "Chili," Mara said. "If it's not trying to be something else." The waitress snorted. "It's honest chili." "And hot chocolate," Lily said, "with all the marshmallows." The waitress glanced at Nathan, who nodded. "And a grilled cheese, for both of us," he added to Mara, "if you're up for it." "I'll eat what I can pay for," Mara said, defensive on reflex. "It's my treat," he said. "You want to keep score? Get a ledger," Mara said. Then she softened. "Thank you." They ordered. The diner settled around them like a coat. Nathan watched the way Mara's hands shook with the first sip of coffee and wondered how long it had been since warmth had been something she could trust. Lily swung her legs under the booth and looked at Mara the way children look at new animals, alert, unafraid, delighted to learn there are more kinds of living than they had previously catalogued. "Do you have a home?" Lily asked suddenly. "Lily," Nathan warned. "It's all right," Mara said. "I have days. Some of them have roofs and some of them don't. I had an apartment on 118th. Then I had a storage unit. Then I had the underside of different scaffolds. Now I have the city, which is generous if you know where to place yourself." "That sounds like a poem," Lily said. "Sometimes it is," Mara answered. The hot chocolate arrived, a mug crowned with marshmallow snow. Lily blew and drank and sighed like a small person with a giant secret. Mara's chili arrived, steam rising, the smell of cumin and relief. Mara ate, then paused, a seriousness flicking across her face like the shadow of a bird. "I know who you are," she said to Nathan. "I knew an hour ago at the gala, but you weren't looking at alleys then. Your photos in elevator screens, your voices in earbuds telling people how to secure their future." Nathan blinked. "You were at the gala?" "Outside," she said, "where the coats went from shoulders to hangers. Sometimes the caterers throw away the wrong trays." He nodded, throat tight. "I didn't follow you," she said, anticipating his worry. I wasn't going to say anything. That was the plan for this whole winter. Don't say anything. Eat what the city discards and keep all my stories on silent. But then your girl handed me a scarf. She touched it with 2 fingers, as if it were made of light. That felt like a door opening. Sometimes you have to walk through the door that opens, even if you don't know what room you're entering. "What is it you wanted to say?" he asked, because there was a gravity in the way she looked at him that reconfigured the air in his lungs. She looked down at the chili, as if to check whether it was still there, and real. When she looked back up, her eyes had shifted from cautious to clean. "I promised her I'd find you," she said. The diner's noises receded. Nathan heard nothing but the sentence. It whistled through the empty rooms inside him. "Who?" he asked, though his heart knew the name before his mouth did. "Hannah," Mara said. "Your wife." The light off the snow refracted into something sharper. Nathan's hand slid off the table and found his knee so he could press the reality of this moment into something that felt like a surface. "How did you—" He tried again. "How did you know her?" "3rd floor, St. Bridget's," she said. "Night shift. The nurses rotated. I did the laundry and the linens and read to anyone who would listen. I wasn't supposed to sit in rooms, but sometimes rules aren't as worthy as company." Hannah liked everything, even when it hurt to like it. She liked the sound other people's lives make when they thought no one was listening. She told stories about you and your girl, like she was saving her favorite bits for a long winter. She called you a good man, cursed by busy hands. He flinched at the accuracy. "There were the nights no one came," Mara said softly, not accusing, just telling. "There were nights the city was a machine that punched your minutes into someone else's ledger, and she understood that, but it still left the room a little colder. So we would talk. She would ask me about my life, and when I said there wasn't much to tell, she would tell me I was lying. She told me the story is always there. You just have to find the beginning." Nathan swallowed and wished for water. The waitress, reading the gravity without needing the specifics, set a glass in front of him and moved on. "She wanted to write you letters," Mara continued, "but the writing got hard, and you were always there when you could be. So one night, when December was leaning into the windows like a sad neighbor, she made me promise something. She said, 'If I don't get to carry these words where they're going, will you carry them for me?' And I laughed and told her I wasn't a mailman, I was the linen lady, and she said, 'That's why I trust you, because you won't deliver them like a job. You'll deliver them like love.'" Lily had stopped swinging her feet. She watched Mara with an attention that felt too large for her age. "What words?" Nathan asked, voice barely in his throat. Mara reached into her coat. The knife was there, handle bound in twine, but she moved past it into a pocket that had a second layer she'd sewn by hand. She took out an envelope that had been folded and unfolded so many times it had become soft. It had no stamp. It had a name scrawled in blue pen that broke Nathan's heart open with muscle memory. Nate. Hannah's handwriting was a photograph you could feel with your fingers. "I keep things in layers," Mara said, almost apologetic. "That way if someone takes the top, they don't take the thing that matters." He took the envelope with a hand that didn't feel like it belonged to a man who could pilot a company through a market storm without blinking. He slid a finger under the flap. The paper made a sound he had heard before when opening cards on birthdays, with candles that promised a wish if you could muster breath. He unfolded the letter. "Nate, my love, if this letter finds you, it means I couldn't keep my promise to only put it in your hand, so look at me with kindness anyway. I tried to write this in the daytime when I could pretend I had all the time that lives inside that word, but the truth wanted the dark, so I'm writing while the machines whisper and the city wears its best dress of silence. I don't have instructions for you because life won't take them. I have one request. When December comes and the cold sits down beside you, do not let it tell you that you are alone. Open the door, the exact one. It will open for you. When you see her, you'll know. She will need almost nothing and almost everything. Give her what you can. Tell Lily that the snow isn't Santa's dust. It's the sky practicing falling so we remember how to catch things. Most of all, forgive the weather. All of it, even me. Nathan didn't realize he had put the page to his mouth until he tasted the paper and salt. He folded the letter and unfolded it again and wrenched his eyes to Mara as if she were gravity. "How?" he started, then abandoned language. "How do you have this?" "She wrote it with me," Mara said. "I sat there and handed her the pen when she dropped it and told her that if the words weren't pretty, they were still hers, and that's what made them perfect. She sealed it and gave it to me. She said I would know when to give it to you because the day would look like a beginning and an ending at the same time. And I told her that every day looks like that to me. So she said, 'Christmas Eve. Find Nate on Christmas Eve.'" The room shifted back into a diner. A car rolled by outside wearing a cap of snow. Someone in a booth behind them laughed too loudly and apologized. The waitress refilled coffee and left sugar packets like a blessing. "Why didn't you—" He wanted to ask why she hadn't found him before. He wanted to ask what had happened to her in the 19 months and whole lifetime since Hannah died. He wanted to ask how she had become someone who slept under scaffolds and ate misprinted cake. He wanted to fix something so badly his chest felt like a fist. "Because I lost the right map," she said, reading him as if he were made of clean glass. "After St. Bridget's closed, my hours went away, then my apartment. I put all my things in a storage unit and got behind on the payment, and they sold it. Do you know where they keep a person's life when they sell it by the square foot? Not anywhere you can bike to with a shopping cart. I kept the envelope on me always. The rest of it, God. She made a box for you. Not a big one, just a red tin with a white snowflake. She said it was full of the next parts of your story. I was supposed to bring it to you, and then I couldn't pay for the place where I kept the box, and a man with a peppermint tattoo took it to an auction in Queens. I tried to find it, I did. But Queens is a continent when you're on foot." Nathan looked down at the letter again because looking directly at the word loss had never been his best skill. Mara touched the scarf at her throat as if to confess she had no right to be warm. "I didn't come to you to tell you I failed," she said, as if the idea were unbearable. "I came to give you what I could carry. I came to say that your wife's words didn't vanish just because the box did. She spoke them out loud enough times that some of them got lost in me. She said this: 'The brave thing isn't holding on, it's asking for help,' and I hated that. Because I am good at holding, I am bad at asking. Then your little girl handed me a scarf and made it look like nothing." Lily had her chin in her palm. "I can help," she said quietly, as if leading with help were the only reasonable way to talk. Nathan breathed in a way that was almost a sob and almost a laugh. "What did she look like when she said that?" he asked. "Hannah, the brave thing." "She looked like a person not pretending to be a season," Mara said. "She looked like there was no distance between what she felt and what she showed. I find that kind of person dangerous and necessary." The waitress slid a grilled cheese onto the table. Lily didn't touch it. Nathan took a bite he didn't taste. "Can you tell me more?" he asked, the words scraping his throat, each one a vote of confidence in oxygen. Mara nodded. She told him about little things, the way Hannah liked water with exactly 3 ice cubes, the way she called morphine the soft elevator, the way she asked for the blinds open no matter what, because the dark already knew where to find her. She spoke like she was putting bread on an empty table, one slice at a time. Nathan listened like eating was a new skill. Lily slid closer to Mara in the booth and leaned against her sleeve as if to test whether someone who told stories could also be leaned on. When Mara finished, there was a quiet that felt earned. "Thank you," Nathan said. The words were too small for the gravity, but they were words he could lift with his hands. Mara nodded once. Her eyes were bright in a way that had nothing to do with the diner's lights. "I have a question," she said, voice cautious, "and I need you to say no if it's a bad one." "Okay." "There's a storage auction tomorrow morning," she said, "in Queens. The peppermint tattoo man is there sometimes. I got wind that a red tin with a snowflake showed up on a table last week and didn't sell. They plan to try again. I wanted to go. I planned to go. But then I watched them lock the shelter doors and I realized the city has its own list of who gets inside. I thought If you wanted, maybe we could go together. Tomorrow, he said, and then the meaning of the day tomorrow was hit by a bell in his head. Christmas. Yes, she said. Christmas morning, 10 a.m. People don't stop losing their things because a calendar tells them to celebrate. Nathan looked at Lily. They had plans. Pancakes shaped like snowmen, a present that whistled when you opened it, a visit from his mother-in-law who held her grief like a bouquet of knives and called it pruning. He tried to picture telling Evelyn that he was going to a storage auction with a homeless woman who carried his dead wife's letter in a double-sewn pocket, and he realized there are conversations you don't plan, you just announce. "We can go," he heard himself say. Lily clapped quietly, as if to keep from scaring the moment. "Are you sure?" Mara asked. "I don't want to trespass on your Christmas." "It's not trespassing," he said. "It sounds like the exact house we're supposed to be in." Mara closed her eyes and opened them, as if she were letting in something she'd been trained to keep out. "All right," she whispered. "Then I'll meet you at the 86th Street station at 9, or we can walk. I'm a good walker. You can see a lot of sky if you choose the right avenues." "We'll pick you up," he said, then stopped himself. Where do you want to meet?" 86th, she said, not making him learn a geography. That would shame them both. "I'll be near the big dog statue. He looks like he knows his way home." They finished dinner. Nathan paid. The waitress pretended not to see the tip was a confession and a trying. They stepped back into the snow, which had decided to commit to the bit. Lily tugged on Mara's sleeve. "You can keep the scarf long as you want," she said. "Grandma can knit a billion more. She told me so, and I asked if that was hyperbole, and she said yes, but the cozy kind." "Thank you," Mara said. "I promise I'll keep it safe and dramatic." Ditto, they parted. Lily waved until Mara turned the corner and became an idea again. At home, the apartment was warm in the strategic ways a good thermostat makes sure you don't have to earn it. Nathan tucked Lily into bed and read the story she wanted, the one with the river that turned to glass. She fell asleep with the book open, stubborn even in her rest. He kissed her forehead, his mouth remembering her baby salt, and then he went to the den where Hannah's sweater still lived on the back of a chair like an idea that refused to fold. He read the letter again. He traced the loops of her handwriting the way a person might trace the pattern of an old scar. His phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn confirming arrival time and bringing too much cranberry sauce. He typed back, "We're going out for a bit in the morning, back by noon, trust me." Then he put the phone down because trust was not a thing that lived in devices. He slept like a man who had set something down. Morning arrived the way it always does, indifferent and new. The city was sugar-dusted and hung over from the night's festivities. Nathan dressed in jeans and a coat that cost more than he paid attention to most days. He made Lily pancakes and cut one into a heart without comment. At 8:30 they were in the car, a practical SUV that didn't even know how to be ostentatious. He told the driver to take them to the 86th Street station, tipped twice as much as was reasonable on Christmas, and asked the man to go home to his family. They found Mara by the dog statue, the scarf bright against her gray. She stood with her hands in her pockets and her back to the crowd the way people do when the crowd hasn't been kind. "You came," she said, as if she'd half believed she had dreamed them into being. "Of course," Nathan said. "We promised." Mara looked at Lily and gave a little bow. "Good morning, Scarf Ambassador." "Good morning, Mara of the Chili," Lily said solemnly. They took the subway like everyone else, the car full of paper bags with bakery logos and kids arguing about whether Santa liked cinnamon rolls. They changed at Queensboro and climbed into daylight that smelled like fried dough and diesel and possibility. The storage auction was in a warehouse that had been a warehouse since the idea of warehousing arrived in the city. The lot behind it held dreams at varying stages of being smashed. The peppermint tattoo man was there, unmistakable in a knit cap that had lost its ability to pretend it was warm, and a forearm banded by red and white stripes that curled like a candy cane through fuzz. "That's him," Mara said. She followed Nathan's gaze. "He won't remember me. He remembers units. Inside, a man with a clipboard said, 50 cash to bid, as if reciting a prayer to a God who believed in rules. Nathan handed over his credit card and got a look that said the God does not accept that currency. He handed over cash, even though he preferred everything with a decimal point to be digital. He got a number on a stick in exchange. They walked down a corridor where metal doors rolled up to reveal other people's last lines. A boy with a gap-toothed grin sold coffee from a thermos that had belonged to a truck. The peppermint tattoo man smoked and eyed everything that might turn into a margin. The auctioneer, a woman with a voice designed to outrun time, opened units and sang values onto their contents. Nathan had never been in a place where loss was arranged into aisles. He felt like he needed to bow, and he didn't know to what. Unit after unit went to men and a few women who knew how to recognize value inside uncertainty. Train sets, outgrown clothes that could be cleaned into a profit, a bicycle that would learn another child's weight. Lily grabbed Nathan's hand so tight his bones took notice. He didn't let go. At a certain point, the auctioneer reached a unit near the back. The door rolled up. Inside, the sediment of a life sorted into plastic tubs and two pieces of furniture that tried to stand like they were still in a living room. On a metal shelf along one wall, a tin the size of a book that had been brave. Red paint in circles, a white snowflake in the center, simple as a yes. Mara's breath made a sound like something fragile trying to remember how to be strong. "Here we go," the auctioneer sang. "What do I start for the lot?" 50, said Peppermint Tattoo. The number on Nathan's stick felt like a weapon and a prayer. 100, he said. 150. 250. The crowd glanced at Nathan's coat, at his clean beard, at the child gripping his hand. Nathan resisted the urge to explain himself to strangers. He didn't owe anyone an argument when the only thing he wanted to do was rewrite gravity. 300, he said. 350, Peppermint said, amused by the man who was learning how auctions worked in real time. 4, Nathan said. He heard Mara's breath next to him, felt the way her body had learned to be smaller inside rooms so she would take up less need. 450. 5? Peppermint Tattoo smiled like a man playing a game with a child who was about to learn about rules. 6. 8, Nathan said, a jump that sent a ripple through the crowd. He wanted to win. He wanted to be done. He wanted the letter in his pocket to stop burning a hole through him. The auctioneer only cared about numbers. 800. Do I hear 9? 850, Peppermint mused, just to keep things interesting. 1,000, Nathan said, teeth clenched around how much he did not care about being cool. The woman let the number hang for a beat and then brought the hammer down on the morning. Sold, she said, satisfied. Cashier's in the office? Peppermint winked at Nathan, as if the whole city had an inside joke that money could sometimes tell. They walked to the cashier together, the three of them. Nathan paid. The clerk handed him a receipt, like a benediction disguised as paper. They got a lock cut and a new one placed, and a small sign that said, Unit Hash 34, sold. You want help loading? The boy with the thermos asked. Not today, Nathan said. His voice would not hold anything else. In Unit 34, the air smelled like old books and something floral that refused to leave. Nathan reached for the tin and then stopped because Mara was already moving. She picked it up with both hands, as if to honor the weight of what it held. She set it on a plastic tub and sat on an upside-down laundry basket like a queen without a throne. Open it, Nathan said. You should, she said, pushing it toward him. He glanced at Lily, whose eyes were wide enough to take in an entire day. We will, he told Mara. All of us? He lifted the lid. It stuck for a second with the determination of nostalgia. When it came free, the scent of cinnamon crawled out. Inside were folded papers, a flash drive taped with pink washi tape, a Polaroid of Hannah grinning at the camera with cake on her lip, and a candle jammed into a banana, because why not? A list written in block letters that at first he didn't recognize and then did. Hannah's, when she was concentrating. The list read in no particular order: songs for Lily, the lemon pancake recipe, Forgiveness, the story of the yellow kite. Call Mara at Christmas. The antique key to the thing in the river. What thing in the river? Lily asked, as if the river were an address and she wanted to mail it a question. Nathan had the key in his hand before he understood that his hand had gone looking for it. It was old, ornate, as if it had opened something that mattered before people had invented apps for that. "The ferry lockers," Mara said suddenly. "There were lockers on the Staten Island ferry once. In the terminal, they locked them after—" She let the sentence jump a chasm. "But in Hoboken, near the old pier, there's a bench with a nameplate. She told me about it. The key for the thing in the river." She laughed like she was telling a secret she wasn't sure she wanted to keep. "Do you think—" Nathan started. "Yes," Mara said simply. "I think she was building a map to make sure none of you got lost." They took the tin and the key and the flash drive and the Polaroid and left the rest of the unit with the dignity of later. Outside, the sky had turned the color of aluminum foil. Nathan called Evelyn and said, "We're running late," and held the phone away from his ear while grief practiced its choir in her voice. They took a cab to Hoboken because that felt like a sentence he would only say once in his life. The bench had a plaque. "Hannah Cole sat here and loved the world." Lily traced the letters with one careful finger. The river wore its winter face, gray and certain. The pier had under it a maintenance locker that tourists never saw and locals forgot. The key fitted like it had always been waiting. Inside, a plastic container wrapped in a garbage bag because Hannah believed in both romance and practicality. Inside that, a little blue player with headphones, an envelope with Lily written on it in crayon, and a photograph of the three of them in a sunlit kitchen that made Nathan feel like he was going to throw up and also live forever. "Can we listen?" Lily whispered. Nathan put the headphones on her and pressed play. Hannah's voice, still alive on the magnetic ribbon of a cheap recorder, came into the winter. Lily's eyes opened wide, then closed, then filled in a way that made the world tilt. Nathan put one ear of the headphones against his own and listened to the sound of home. "Hi, Bug," Hannah's voice said. "If this is playing, it means I had to go back to the stars earlier than we agreed. I'm mad about it, too. But I want to tell you some things the way I say them best, badly and with interruptions. The recording was imperfect," she coughed. She made a joke and then apologized to herself for it. She sang 2 lines of a song about pancakes. She said Lily's full name and then laughed because it sounded like a law firm. She told a story about a yellow kite that got caught in a tree and how the tree was very brave for holding on until the wind changed. "Daddy is going to forget to eat sometimes," she said quietly. "Remind him that oranges exist. He will want to fix the world with his hands. Remind him that your hand is the only world he has to fix. Tell him I'm not gone. I'm just living in a part of the house you can't see yet. When it rains, that's me running a bath we'll share later." Nathan pressed the side of the player against his forehead like prayer. They sat on the bench and let the river pretend it had answers. Tourists walked by in coats that made them look like colorful birds. Somewhere a kid yelped because a snowball had learned to fly. Mara stood a little apart, eyes on the water, as if it might carry her reflection to a place where it would fit. "Thank you," Nathan said when he could breathe around the gratitude. "I didn't do anything a decent neighbor wouldn't," Mara said, as if refusing a medal she hadn't been offered. "You did something brave," he said. "You asked." She shrugged like she had only lifted a laundromat basket. They went back into the city. In the apartment, Evelyn had made it inside and installed cranberry sauce on his table like a person who believed the right tartness could fix a season. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw Mara. She had the kind of judgment that sharpened itself on fear. "This is Mara," Nathan said. "She took care of Hannah when I couldn't. She's staying for lunch." The lie that she was staying for lunch contained a truth he was still working up to. Evelyn went rigid in that particular way that makes polite society itch. "In my day, we didn't bring strangers to the table on Christmas." "In Hannah's day, she did," Nathan said softly. which is today. They ate. Lily put marshmallows in her cranberry sauce as if to teach it joy. Evelyn fumed silently, then loudly, then became quiet in the way people get when the world refuses to align with their fear. At some point, she looked at Mara and said, "Thank you," as if paying a debt to a God she didn't entirely trust. After dishes, after a toast with orange juice and sparkling water because neither of them had slept enough to want anything stronger, Nathan asked Mara, "Where are you sleeping tonight?" She began to give the answer people give so they can stay inside the architecture of their pride. He cut through it gently. "Would you let me put you in a hotel for a week?" he asked. "Warm, quiet, no lesson, just a room and a door that locks in your favor." "I don't have a credit card," she said. "You'll have mine," he replied. "No," she said, almost smiling. "I mean, I don't have a credit history that makes clerks generous." "I do," he said. "Let me spend it on something that isn't furniture." She looked at him long. The scarf sat bright at her throat. "All right," she said finally. "But only until the week finishes. I'm good at leaving before the ending gets ugly." He booked a room on his phone in a hotel where the lobby smelled like green apples and money that had gone to finishing school. They took a cab. He handed his card to a clerk who recognized his name, but pretended not to. He made sure the room had a bath. He put the tin with the snowflake inside the in-room safe and wrote the code on a piece of paper that he handed to Mara and Lily at the same time. "This is our vault," Nathan said. "All three of ours." In the hallway, goodbye felt like a door that didn't want its job. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll go through the rest of the tin, make pancakes, send a thank you into the river." Mara nodded. She touched the scarf again. "Your girl gave me Christmas," she said. "What am I supposed to do with that?" "Keep it," he said simply. He and Lily went home and fell into a nap that felt like being returned to a ship that had found its harbor after months of learning the names of storms. When he woke, there were 3 unread emails and a text from his head of PR asking if he was attending the mayor's reception. He typed, "Not this year." Then he opened his laptop and began writing an email to his COO about a program he had been thinking about for months and had been too cowardly to implement, hiring and training people transitioning out of homelessness into full-time roles at their company's new customer support center with wraparound services for housing and childcare. He had promised his board growth. He had not promised them that the growth would be purely shareholder-shaped. He pressed send. The week unfolded the way a good book does when you stop pretending you're too busy to read. He took Lily to the hotel to visit Mara every afternoon. They ran the flash drive and found a folder of videos of Hannah making pancakes badly and then better. Hannah telling stories about a yellow kite and the day Nathan tried yoga and looked like an injured deer. Hannah whispering into the camera, "If I can't help you live later, let me help you live now." They cried with joy and with the salt that grief wrings out of your worst days to water your best. Mara slowly expanded into the space. The first day she stood near the window as if she might be dragged back outside by a gust. By the third day she had taken off her boots. On the fourth, Nathan flinched when he saw the bruises around her ankles where boots that didn't fit had done their slow work. He bought her a pair that did. She said, "You can't buy me whole," and he said, "Good, because I don't believe in ownership." And she laughed like a person remembering the sound for the first time. Evelyn tried to object 3 more times and failed 1 less time than that. On day 5, she brought over a bag of clothes she said she had no use for, including a sweater Hannah had hated and a shawl she had loved and been photographed in Central Park, with leaf shadows like blessings on her face. Mara refused the sweater and took the shawl and draped it around her shoulders, with a reverence that made Evelyn sit down as if she had run out of instructions for her own heart. A week after Christmas, snow had become slush, and all the store windows had quietly given up pretending to be magical. The hotel room clock kept time in digits. Nathan knocked on the door and found Mara standing barefoot on the carpet, the scarf folded on the dresser as if it were preparing for a ceremony. "I've found a place," she said. Her voice trembled at the beginning like a sail when it first finds the wind. "It's a women's residence run by a church that believes in letting you choose whether to attend sermons. They need a night desk person and a day person to coordinate laundry and linens. I told them my religion is correctly folded sheets. They hired me. There's a bed. It has a little bookshelf like a joke that's true." He smiled with a fullness that made his face feel new. "Congratulations." "You helped," she said. "You asked," he replied. "Let me ask one more thing," she said, eyes bright. "I want to keep working for you, too, doing the thing you just started, or doing something next to it. People don't need saviors. They need neighbors who know where the spare key is and don't make a ceremony out of unlocking the door." Nathan exhaled, the week catching up to him. "Then we'll write your job description together. You'll hate it, because job descriptions are just ways to make free people sound like boxes. But we'll use it to open doors, not close them." They walked to the park because the day asked for footprints. Lily ran ahead and made angels in dirty snow and called them ghosts who weren't very committed. Nathan and Mara walked at a pace that honored the idea that you don't have to arrive anywhere to have gotten there. "Can I tell you something?" Mara asked. He nodded. "On Christmas Eve," she said, voice thinner, as if handing him something small that mattered too much. "When I was going to walk away because I'd failed to bring you the box, and I decided I didn't deserve to say the words anyway, I heard your girl in that alley say, 'Please.' It sounded like a door unlocking, and I remembered the last thing Hannah said to me before I put the letter in my pocket. She said, 'He will think you changed his life by finding him. Tell him the truth. Tell him he changed mine by being found.'" Nathan looked up. The sky had resumed its job of being honest. "She said that?" he asked. Mara nodded. "Hannah said a lot of things. She said I should stop pretending to be a season. She said I should let someone see me without the duct tape and the story that makes me smaller. She said that if I wanted to stand in the kitchen of the world, I needed to accept that sometimes I would be handed a knife, and sometimes a spoon, and sometimes a letter that tastes like paper and a beginning." Lily scampered back to them and put a dirty snowball into Mara's palm like a jewel. Mara laughed and let it melt, water running down the lines of her hand and disappearing into sleeve. They kept walking. They passed a man playing a saxophone under a bridge who had learned to make the air curtsy. They passed a woman scolding her dog for eating a glove that might have been a mitten, but aspired to more. They passed a little boy holding his mother's hand so tightly the whole world might have been attached to her by that grip. The office opened after the holidays. Nathan stood in front of his company's leadership team and told them about a new initiative that would make them better and riskier, and possibly a little less attractive to people who counted only money. He said words like housing partnership and job training and no more contractors without living wage guarantees. He said words like our neighbors, as if they were not metaphors. He watched their faces rearrange. Some objected. They did it gently but clearly. They spoke of brand and scope and the optics of moving so fast. He listened. Then he told them a story about a storage unit and a tin with a snowflake and a voice on a tape telling a child to remind her father that oranges exist. He didn't cry. He didn't threaten. He said, "If we are not brave, we are not us." They voted. He won by enough to matter and not enough to let him be lazy. Mara came in the next week wearing the shawl and the new boots, and it looked like the door had opened before she had knocked. She had a notebook and a pen and a list of names of shelters and services and a map she had drawn herself of, where the city's cold made small disasters. She set the notebook on the table in the conference room and began. "We will start here. People who need jobs always start here. People who want to pretend others are invisible do not know this address. Now we do." Nathan watched his team listen to her. He watched them make room at the table for the person they always said they wanted to understand but never invited to the meeting. He watched a company he had built turn 20 degrees closer to what he had dreamed before he learned the price of things. At home, he and Lily built a small altar on the bookshelf with the red tin. the key, the Polaroid, and the letter in a frame that didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. They added a slice of lemon pancake on a white plate every Sunday morning until Lily declared the tradition was making her too sticky and they adjusted. He played Hannah's tape on days when the weather inside his chest was severe. He told Lily stories about her mother that were true, and also the parts that stories require to become bigger than the facts. In late January, they went back to the diner where the coffee tasted like forgiveness. The waitress remembered them and said, "How was your Christmas?" in a tone that plumbed the distances between pleasantry and prayer. "Better than expected," Nathan said. He left a tip that would buy a week of someone's groceries and a note that said, "Thank you for letting us be complicated in your booth." After lunch, they walked past the bakery alley. The dumpster lid was down. The snow was a memory of itself in the dirty edges where city meets intention. Lily stood where she had first seen Mara and made the space into a stage. "Daddy," she said, "what did she say again? On Christmas Eve?" He knew which she meant and which say she meant. He let the exact words settle before he spoke them because they deserved that treatment. "She said she promised your mom she'd find us," he said. "She said the brave thing isn't holding on, it's asking for help." Later she said something else. She said your mom told her to tell me the truth, that I didn't change her life by helping. I changed hers by being found. Lily considered this. "We should make that into a sign," she said, pragmatic, as if the city simply needed better labels. "We kind of did," he said, "at the office and at home and in our days." She slipped her small hand into his. "Then we're doing it right." They stood in that alley and let the wind blow away whatever the day didn't need. Nathan looked up at the sky, which had returned to its habit of pretending to be far away while touching everything. He did something he hadn't done since the first week after Hannah died. He said, "Thank you," out loud to no one, and nothing, and the exact thing that had earned it. He didn't whisper. He didn't make it a ceremony. He just said it like a person who had finally accepted the shape of his life without shaving off edges to make it fit somewhere it didn't belong. In the spring, the city wore magnolia and excuses. The program at the office became a thing people wrote about in places Nathan used to chase. He hated half the articles because they made him a hero, and loved the other half because they made Mara the map. They hired 40 people who knew the city at night and the day after. They made mistakes. They fixed the kind that could be fixed. They adopted a new policy. If you've never missed a rent payment, you don't get to decide how we talk about people who have. On the anniversary of Hannah's death, they went back to the bench. They brought oranges. They peeled them and let the peel sit in a circle like a crown. Mara came with them and told the story of the night Hannah had insisted on listening to thunder with the blinds open because she wanted to know what power sounded like when it wasn't pretending to be polite. Nathan listened and learned a new piece of his wife, the way you learn a different angle of a mountain when you walk around it again. Lily brought the recorder and pressed play on nothing and said, "Hi, Mommy," into the air. The wind lifted her hair. The river pretended to be still. Nathan took his daughter's hand and Mara's and felt the way a family can expand without such exhausting the word. Later, when the day was almost done, Nathan turned to Mara. "You look different," he said. She smiled, sheepish and proud. "I got a haircut and I stopped arguing with mirrors. Both take practice." He nodded. "Do you still have the scarf?" She lifted a hand to her throat where the green now lived sometimes and not all the time. "Yes," she said, "but I learned it's better to wear it when I want to be warm, not when I want to be a story about being cold." He tucked that away for the days he would need it. Months later, in a panel he didn't want to be on, but had been convinced would help raise money for a shelter that deserved it, a moderator asked him the worst question disguised as the right one. What was the moment that changed everything? He thought of 1,000 answers. He thought of $1 million and a single dollar, and the way neither had the power people assigned to them. He thought of a fragile letter and a red tin and an antique key that had opened a locker in the ribcage of a river. He thought of a scarf on a woman's throat and a child saying, "Please," like a spell. He said, "Christmas Eve. A woman in an alley told me she'd made a promise. Then she said something else. She said, 'The brave thing isn't holding on, it's asking for help.' That line rearranged me. What she said did that. The rest was walking through the doors that sentence opened." After people came up to shake his hand and take pictures their friends would like. He stood in the lobby with a plastic cup of water and watched Mara talk with a board member about policy and progress as if they were recipes. He felt Hannah somewhere in the house he couldn't see yet and decided that was enough. On his way out, a young man in a sweater that looked like it had learned to be kind stopped him. "Mr. Cole," he said, nervous, "I was at the shelter last year. I work in your support center now. I just wanted to say thank you." Nathan shook his hand. "No," he said, steady and certain. "Thank you for letting me be found." Nathan woke the next morning to the sound of Lily humming in the kitchen. For a long moment he lay still, letting the melody curl around him like smoke. It was Hannah's old song, the one she'd used to distract herself while folding laundry or stirring pasta. His chest ached, but not in the brutal way it once had. It was softer now, more like a reminder than a wound. When he entered the kitchen, Lily was perched on a stool, scribbling in a notebook. "I'm writing a letter to Mom," she said matter-of-factly. He kissed the top of her head. "What are you telling her?" "That we found Mara," Lily said. "That she gave us Christmas, and that we're going back to the river soon. Do you think Mom can read letters that don't get mailed?" Nathan swallowed the lump rising in his throat. "I think some letters get delivered without paper." Lily accepted that with a nod, as if it were a scientific fact. She went back to her scribbling, and Nathan poured coffee, the bitter scent grounding him in the ordinary. For a man who had once measured his worth in stock prices and quarterly returns, the ordinary had become extraordinary. Later that day Mara called. Her voice carried the strange mixture of relief and caution of someone learning how to live in the present after being trained by years of survival to expect the rug to be pulled away. "I wanted you to know," she said, "I start my shift at the residence tonight. Night desk. It's not glamorous, but it's a door that opens and closes when I want it to." "That's more glamorous than you think," Nathan said. There was a pause, then a small laugh, like she didn't trust herself with too much joy at once. "Thank you for everything." "You did the harder part," Nathan said. "You stayed." They hung up, and he stood at the window, watching the city turn itself over in traffic and light, and thought about how much staying really meant. Weeks stretched into months. Mara settled into her job at the residence, her voice steady when she called, her stories filled with small victories, helping a woman find her estranged sister, teaching another how to use email, managing to save enough for a new coat that wasn't patched with tape. She still carried Hannah's letter in her pocket, but less like a talisman and more like a companion. Nathan and Lily visited her often. Sometimes it was dinner at a cheap diner. Sometimes it was long walks through Central Park, where Lily insisted on making snow angels well into March. Once Mara brought them to the residence kitchen and showed Lily how to make soup from scratch, teaching her that soup wasn't about recipes, but about what you had and how much love you were willing to stir into it. It wasn't charity anymore. It wasn't obligation. It was something else, a bond that refused to be neatly categorized but felt as necessary as breath. By spring, Nathan had expanded his foundation. He sat in meetings not with hedge fund managers but with shelter coordinators and advocacy lawyers, discussing budgets for beds and legal aid. His board grumbled at the shift in focus, but he stared them down with the ease of a man who had learned that money was never the real currency of survival. Presence was. And then, on a Sunday morning, heavy with the smell of wet earth, Mara arrived at his apartment with something in her hands. "I found it," she said, holding out a small tin with a faded snowflake. Nathan's breath caught. "The box?" She nodded. Storage unit auctions are strange things. They sell lives by the lot, but sometimes the person who buys a lot doesn't really want the little things. A man I know at a thrift store kept this aside because he thought it looked sentimental. It took me months, but here." Nathan opened the tin with trembling hands. Inside were more letters, folded photographs, and a necklace Hannah used to wear when she cooked on Sundays. His throat burned as Lily pressed her face into his side, whispering, "It smells like her." They spent hours going through the contents. Each letter was a slice of Hannah's voice, written at different times. Notes about Lily's first steps, reminders to Nathan not to forget Joy, and lists of stories she wanted told even if she wasn't there to tell them. One note, scrawled on the back of a grocery receipt, read, "If grief is a house, remember to open the windows." They opened every window that day. The months that followed stitched them closer together. Nathan found himself calling Mara not just when he needed advice on the foundation, but when he needed silence filled by someone who understood how to sit with absence without flinching. Lily began referring to Mara as "our friend," but in the fierce, unshakable way children mean it when they're claiming someone as family. By the time summer arrived, the three of them had built something none of them had planned, but all of them recognized as essential. Nathan realized one evening, as Lily laughed in the park and Mara threw her head back to watch the sky, that Hannah had been right in her letter. The brave thing hadn't been holding on. It had been asking for help. And the miracle, Nathan thought, was that when he asked, without words, without even realizing it, help had come. Not as rescue, not as charity, but as love reshaped into new form. On the anniversary of Hannah's passing, they returned to the bench by the river. Nathan carried the snowflake tin. Lily carried her notebook filled with letters she had been writing all year. Mara carried nothing but herself, which was everything. They sat together, the river moving like time, relentless and forgiving. Nathan opened the tin, placed a letter on the water, and watched it drift. "What did she say again?" Lily asked softly. Nathan closed his eyes and repeated it exactly. "The brave thing isn't holding on, it's asking for help." Mara touched the scarf still wrapped around her neck, her voice almost breaking as she whispered, "And being found." The river carried their words away, but Nathan knew they would echo back in every season, in every quiet room, in every act of love disguised as survival. And for the first time in years, he felt entirely whole. Nathan didn't sleep much that night after they let Hannah's letter drift into the river. He sat on the edge of his bed, the snowflake tin on the nightstand, Lily asleep across the hall, and Mara's scarf folded neatly over the chair. The apartment was quiet in that heavy way New York sometimes is, in the deep of night, like the city itself was holding its breath. For years after Hannah died, that silence had been unbearable. Now it felt different. It wasn't emptiness. It was possibility. He thought of Hannah's handwriting, the loops and hurried slants of her letters, the way she had told him to open the right door. He had done that. Mara was proof of it. And Lily, resilient and stubborn, had been the one who insisted they step into the alley that night. Maybe Hannah had known her daughter would be the map. By dawn, Nathan made a decision. He didn't want his life to be measured in quarterly reports anymore. He wanted it measured in dinners cooked badly, but eaten together anyway, in bedtime stories improvised until Lily laughed herself to sleep, in foundations that existed not to polish reputations but to actually change something. When he walked into the office on Monday, his board was waiting with their usual hunger for numbers. "Our stock dipped 2 points," one of them began. Nathan raised a hand. "From now on," he said, his voice calm but immovable, "we don't measure success only by stock price. We measure it by the people we serve. We've built an empire on efficiency. Now we're going to build one on humanity." The silence was thick. A few exchanged glances, as though trying to decide if their CEO had lost his mind. But Nathan didn't flinch. For the first time in his career, he wasn't trying to sell anything. He was telling the truth. That week, he redirected millions into his foundation: legal aid, housing partnerships, job training. The press caught wind of it, of course. Headlines framed it as a wealthy man's guilty conscience or a midlife crisis. Nathan ignored them. For every article that speculated about his motives, 3 families got housing. For every skeptical commentator, another mother walked into court with a lawyer she wouldn't have been able to afford. One evening, he invited Mara and Lily to a gala the foundation had hastily organized to showcase the first successes. Mara almost refused. She hated the spotlight. But Nathan coaxed her with the promise that she didn't have to say a word. "Just stand with me," he told her. She wore a borrowed dress, simple but elegant. Lily wore a white cardigan and insisted on carrying a notebook in case I need to take notes on the speeches. When they walked into the ballroom together, Nathan felt the room shift, not because of his presence, but because of theirs. Mara standing with her shoulders back despite the whispers she probably imagined, and Lily skipping at her side like she owned the marble floor. During his speech, Nathan didn't mention quarterly returns or strategy. He told the story of a woman in an alley and a scarf handed from one pair of small hands to another. He didn't name Mara, but when he said, "I was found on Christmas Eve," Mara's eyes filled. The applause afterwards wasn't polite. It was raw, loud, and real. Later, when the crowd dispersed and the champagne glasses clinked in careless circles, Mara leaned close. "You're not the man I thought you were when I first saw you." "What man did you think I was?" he asked. "The kind who gives speeches about charity, but doesn't look into alleys." Nathan smiled, not in defense, but in agreement. "Maybe I was, but I'm not anymore." Lily yawned then, tugging at Mara's sleeve. "Can we go home? Galas are boring." Nathan laughed, scooped his daughter up, and nodded. "Yeah, let's go home."